The rain came down hard when the businessman shoved the old sweeper away from the doors. The broom rolled into a puddle. He spat, not even looking. "Get that filth away, you old rag." The old man bent down to gather his things. That's when the black car pulled up, and the man inside went cold at the ring on that finger. What that businessman didn't know yet was that the ring on the old sweeper's finger carried a name his whole empire had spent 40 years trying to bury. Every morning before the sun came up, old Walter was already on the harbour boardwalk with his broom in hand. He swept the leaves, cleared the market trash, straightened the bench that always sat crooked. He knew every fisherman by name. He'd stopped to fix the sign on the fish stall to say good morning to Miss Pearl at the bakery. 70 years old, and his hands were still steady on that broom. On his finger sat an old ring, thin, worn smooth from years of use. Inside it, a date and 2 letters only he knew how to read. It had belonged to Rose, his wife, gone now for 8 long winters. When the missing got heavy, Walter would turn the ring slowly with his thumb and look out at the sea. He'd say nothing. He'd just stand there quiet until the knot in his throat let go. To the plain folks of the harbour, Walter was family. He'd carry the heavy baskets for the old fish ladies. He'd slip a coin to the kids for candy. He fixed the broken bench with his own hands one winter and never told a soul. Nobody paid him for any of it. He just liked taking care of the place he loved. It was the only thing he had left to give, and he gave it freely. The harbour was a place of small lives stacked together. The smell of fish and diesel and warm bread all at once. Old men playing dominoes under the awning. Kids fishing off the pier with bent nails. Walter knew every face, every story. He'd been part of that boardwalk so long that folks forgot there was ever a time he wasn't sweeping it. But there was such a time. There was a whole other life. Right across from the boardwalk rose the prettiest building in town. Mirrored glass, a flag up top, the name Crane Maritime in gold letters. The ships went out from there, the contracts, the big money of the harbour. And the man who ran it was Vincent Crane, expensive suit. A watch worth more than most folks' homes. 40 years old, chin in the air, talking loud so the whole world could hear him. Vincent treated his own people like dirt under his shoe. He'd fire a man over a wrinkled shirt and laugh while he did it. The girls at the front desk learned to keep their eyes down when he walked by. Money, to him, was the only thing that made a person worth anything, and in his eyes a man sweeping a wet street barely counted as a person at all. He never once looked one in the eye. What few people knew was that under all that shine, the company was rotting. Debt piled on debt, suppliers calling, the bank closing in. Vincent needed a miracle, and the miracle had a name. A powerful group from out of town was coming to sign the biggest deal in the harbour's history. It was signed that day or watch it all come down. So the man woke up with a rope around his neck. It rained all night and didn't stop come morning. Even so, Walter showed up at his usual time, a thin poncho over his back, sweeping the front of the building clean for those important visitors. He thought it was a fine thing to help. It was his way of caring for the place he loved. He wasn't after a thank you, he just wanted to do the little he had to do and do it right. That's when Vincent came rushing out the revolving door, phone glued to his ear, and clipped the old man's cart. The bags rolled, water splashed up onto his polished shoe. The businessman went red with rage. He shoved Walter's frail shoulder and shouted, "You blind old man, get this trash out of here. I've got important people coming, I can't have a beggar at my door." People stopped on the sidewalk, but nobody said a word. The rain ran down the old man's wrinkled face while he knelt in the puddle to gather the bags. He didn't fight back. He said quietly, "Sorry, sir," and picked everything up with care. Vincent laughed, mocking, "Sorry doesn't buy me new shoes. People like you were born to clean up after the rest of us. Learn your place." Walter rose slowly, his knees aching, and stood there soaked through, the old ring glinting faintly on his dirty hand. He didn't lower his head. He looked at the businessman with a calm that held no fear at all. He said only, "It's all right, sir," and went back to pushing his cart through the rain. Inside it hurt, but he'd carried far heavier pains than this one. Things like this happen in quiet little towns all over, more than anyone wants to admit. If this is getting to you right now, do me a favor. Tell me where you're watching from down in the comments, so I know how far this story reached. Miss Pearl saw the whole thing from the bakery door. She crossed the rain with a warm loaf wrapped in a cloth and a cup of coffee. "Here, Walter, to warm you up." He thanked her with his eyes. Little Daisy, her granddaughter, ran out and hugged the old man's soaked legs, not caring one bit about the rich man watching. To those plain folks, Walter was worth more than that whole glass tower. Inside, the building was buzzing. That day brought the man who'd decide the company's future. Mr. Samuel, head of a powerful group from another city, known for being hard in business and true to his word. Vincent spent the morning rehearsing his smile, fixing his tie, practicing his speech. Everything hung on that one handshake. Everything. But one thing kept gnawing at Vincent. He didn't want that filthy old man in the photos at the door, in front of his guests. He called security and told them to clear Walter off the boardwalk. "I don't want that rag at my door today. Make him disappear." The guard, uneasy, walked over to the old man and asked him, low, to please move along. Walter understood. He gathered his things and left. He sat on a wet bench down at the end of the pier, far from the building's eyes. Rain dripped off his thin poncho. For the first time in many years, he felt the weight of being thrown out of the one place he felt useful. He turned the ring on his finger, slow. He looked at the grey sea and murmured to the wind, "You should see this, Rose. What they did with our little piece of ground." It was on that bench that a man with an umbrella came up to him. He bought old gold, antique jewelry, he said. He'd spotted the ring from a ways off. "That band's fine work, old-timer. I'll give you good money for it right now, cash in hand." He flashed a roll of bills that would make anyone's eyes light up, and Walter needed the money badly. The bills at home didn't wait for anyone. The old man looked at the roll, then at the ring. His hand trembled. For a second, he almost slipped it off his finger. It was just metal in the end. Old metal. But then his thumb brushed the date carved inside, felt the two letters, and his hand closed on its own. He said firm, "It's not for sale." The man pushed, offered more. Walter only shook his head and looked back at the sea. He thought about Rose then, the way she'd hand him a tin cup of coffee out by the boatyard at dawn, back when his hands still smelled of pine and tar. They'd built something together once, with nothing but sweat and trust. The ring was the last thread to all of it. A man could lose the yard, the house, the name, but that thread he'd keep even if his belly went empty. Meanwhile, Mr. Samuel's car finally pulled up in front of the building. Vincent rushed to meet him, all smiles, umbrella in hand, fawning over every step the important man took. "What an honor, sir, what an honor. You'll see, we spared no expense." Samuel shook his hand with no warmth at all, his eyes drifting across the boardwalk, like a man searching for something. That's when Daisy tugged Miss Pearl's hand and pointed to the end of the pier. "Gran, the man pushed Walter in the rain. I saw it. I filmed it on your phone." Miss Pearl had the video in her hand without even knowing, and across the street, Samuel's eyes finally settled on the old man on the bench, more exactly on the faint shine of that ring. The chairman stopped dead in the middle of the sidewalk. Vincent's smile died on his face. "Sir, let's go in, the room's all ready." Samuel didn't hear a word. He left his host talking to the air and crossed the street in the pouring rain, his expensive suit soaking through, walking straight to the bench where the old sweeper sat. He stopped in front of him. He looked at the ring, and his voice, hard in business, shook. Samuel said, almost out of breath, That ring belonged to Master Walter, the man who owned the old boatyard on this harbour, the man who pulled me off the street when I was a boy and taught me a trade." The old man lifted his tired eyes, and a faint smile broke across his wrinkled face. "Samuel, little Sam who used to sleep in the shed." The chairman dropped to his knees in the puddle and held him like a son holds a father. Samuel held the old man's rough, calloused hands. "You vanished years ago. They told me you'd lost everything, that you'd died." Walter breathed in deep. For a moment his eyes went still, far off, somewhere in the past. Then they steadied again. "I lost the yard, son. They took it from me on paper in fine print I couldn't read. But I didn't die, I just got small." The chairman turned slowly and stared at the glass building across the street. The gold letters, Crane Maritime. The name hit his memory like a punch. Master Walter's old boatyard had stood right there, on that very ground, before the concrete ever went up. Vincent's whole empire had been born on top of land, torn from the old man with a lie and a forged piece of paper. Vincent came running, soaked, stammering, "Sir, this beggar, you can't believe some random old man. Look at the state of him." Samuel stood up, very slow. "This random old man taught me everything I know, and this ground you stand on was stolen from him." Vincent tried to laugh, but it came out crooked. "Stolen? I inherited this company. It's all legal. I've got the papers." Samuel repeated, cold. "The papers. The papers are exactly it. My group spent months studying your company before we'd even think of a deal. And you know what we found buried at the root of it? An old deed, the piece of paper that proves who really owns the land. In Walter's name. It was never sold. It was forged." Vincent went white. His legs nearly gave out under him. And it wasn't just the paper. Miss Pearl crossed the street and held up the phone. The video of the rain, the shove, the old man on his knees in the puddle, the businessman spitting contempt. "Get that filth away, you old rag." Vincent's own voice recorded, echoing on the little screen. The other executives who'd come to sign all stopped to watch. One by one they lowered their eyes. Samuel folded his umbrella and let the rain fall on his head, like a man who didn't care about appearances anymore. "The deal is off." His hard voice cut the air. "I don't do business with a man who steps on someone in the gutter. My group walks away today, right now." The others signed their agreement with silence. The contract that would have saved Vincent turned to wet paper in his hand. Before it all fell, Vincent did one last thing. He found the old man at the pier and tried to buy his silence. He pulled out a check, hand shaking, all the pride gone from his voice. "Name your price, old man. Whatever you want, just keep this quiet." Walter looked at the check, then at the man. "You can't pay back the rain you made me kneel in." He turned and walked away. The check stayed in Vincent's wet hand. The news ran through the harbor before the rain even stopped. A partner who vanished, a bank that called demanding its money, a supplier who cancelled. Without the deal, the rotten company came down in a matter of days, like a sandcastle at high tide. Vincent, who'd humiliated everyone from the top of his tower, watched the gold name get pried off the front. All that was left was twisted steel and shame. Down on the boardwalk, the plain folks gathered around the old man's bench. The fishermen, Miss Pearl, the kids. They'd known all along that Walter was somebody, even when the suits couldn't see it. Nobody cheered. They just stood close, in the rain, the way people do when something that was bent finally comes back straight. And Walter, soaked and tired, looked at them and felt rich. But this story was never about a bad man falling. It was about the old man who'd never stopped being who he was. Samuel took Walter gently by the arm, like he was carrying gold. "You're coming with me. We're going to get back what's yours." The old man looked at the ghost of his boatyard in his memory, and then at the boy he'd raised. He shook his hand, firm. That was all. It was enough. Justice didn't give it all back. The years Walter spent sweeping that street don't return, and Rose wasn't there to see his name made clean again. That wound stayed. But the deed went back where it belonged, and in a corner of the old harbor, with Samuel's help, they raised a small boatyard once more. Wood, the smell of tar, the sound of a hammer. What they'd taken from him came back. On the mornings after, before the sun came up, you could see the old man down at the harbor again, not with a broom now, but with a plane in his hand, smoothing the hull of a new boat, slow, the way he'd learned as a boy. Rose's ring caught the light with every pass along the wood. Miss Pearl sent over the warm coffee. Daisy ran to watch the keel take shape, and the old man smiled. In the end, life teaches one simple thing. A person's worth was never in the clothes they wear or the street they sweep. It's in what they carry inside, quiet, waiting for the right day to show itself. The one who looks down on the small today may wake up one morning and find out it was that small man who held the whole world in his hands. Now I want to hear from you. What part of this story stayed with you the most? Tell me in the comments, and if this story touched your heart, go ahead and hit that like button. Then subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story.